The fluorescent lights of the 24-hour laundromat buzzed like dying wasps, casting everything in sickly yellow. Haley Hoffen fed quarters into the ancient washing machine, calculating survival. $43 until Friday, $35 for the motel, $8 for 3 days of food for herself and 4-year-old Pearl. 3 years of running from Marcus Chen's enforcers. 3 years since her ex-husband Derek borrowed $50,000 for a crypto scam, then disappeared, leaving her with the debt that ballooned to $130,000 with Chen's interest. "Mommy, I'm hungry," Pearl said from the laundry cart, swinging her legs. "I know, sweetheart. We'll eat when we get back. I have crackers and peanut butter." Pearl's face brightened. "The good peanut butter?" Haley's heart broke at her daughter's enthusiasm for store-brand paste. She looked at Pearl too thin, hair needing cutting, thrift store clothes threadbare. When Pearl asked for a quarter for the candy machine, Haley gave her the last one she had. Pearl's squeal of delight was worth everything. "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you." The dryer finished at 11:47 p.m. As Haley folded clothes into duffel bags, 3 men walked in. She knew immediately, predators recognizing prey. The lead man smiled like a shark. "Mrs. Hoffen, you're a hard woman to track down." Haley positioned herself between the men and Pearl. "I don't know what you're talking about. Mr. Chen is tired of waiting. 3 years is pushing his generosity. You come work for him, pay off the debt through service. He's got opportunities for a woman like you." When the tall man moved toward Pearl, Haley threw a detergent bottle at his head. The lean man pulled a gun, leveling it at her. "You're coming with us." "The kid too." Pearl woke up screaming. The door chimed. A man in an expensive suit walked in, dark hair, storm gray eyes, presence that made height irrelevant. He took in the scene and went absolutely cold. "Gentlemen, you're going to want to leave. Now." The lead man laughed. "This ain't your business, friend. I'm not your friend. And you're making it my business by waving a weapon at a child." The lean man shifted his gun toward the newcomer. "Last warning, walk away." The stranger smiled, terrifying. All teeth. "Do you know who I am?" The lead man's face went pale. "Oh, shit. That's right. Now I'm going to count to 3. By 3 you'll be out that door, and you'll tell Marcus Chen that Haley Hoffen is under my protection." "Mr. Band, we didn't know." 1. They ran, all 3 scrambling out like rats fleeing a sinking ship. Haley gathered Pearl, whispering comfort. "The man, Mr." Band watched with unsettling gray eyes. "Thank you," Haley managed. "Don't thank me yet. Those men work for Marcus Chen. I just violated our territorial arrangement. You're in a different kind of trouble now." "I don't understand." "My name is Greg Band. I run the North Side territory. Chen runs the South Side. By claiming you, I just started a war." He glanced toward the window. "You need to come with me." Pearl looked at him. "Are you a good guy or a bad guy?" Greg crouched to her level. "That's complicated, Piccola. I'm a man who keeps his word and protects people who need protecting. You made the scary men go away. That's good. For tonight, yes." An armored SUV arrived. Inside, Pearl asked, "Are you rich?" "Depends on how you measure wealth." "Are you gonna hurt my mommy?" "No. I'm going to keep your mommy safe. And you too. I give you my word, as long as you're under my protection, no one will hurt either of you." Pearl nodded. "Okay. I believe you." They descended into an underground fortress, ascending to a penthouse that overlooked Chicago like a kingdom. "My territory," Greg said. 20 square miles. 200 people answer directly to me. "You're a mob boss." "I run an organization that maintains order where legal authority is insufficient. I protect businesses. I handle problems the police won't touch." His jaw tightened. "Chen will see claiming you as aggression. Things will escalate. Why risk war for strangers?" Greg was quiet. "Then, I had a sister, Lucia. When she was 6, my father's enemies burned our house. She survived, but the smoke damaged her lungs. She died at 16. Haley's breath caught. "I look at your daughter and see Lucia. Brave and small and trusting. If someone had protected us, maybe my sister would still be alive." He met Haley's eyes. "I can't save Lucia, but I can save Pearl. So I will." A woman prepared a suite with 2 bedrooms. In Pearl's room, a white rabbit waited on the bed. Pearl clutched it, eyes closing. "Mommy, I'm sleepy." Haley tucked her in, watching her daughter finally surrender to sleep. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked Greg again. I don't want your money. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we deal with Chen. Tonight you're safe, both of you. Haley stood in the expensive suite, looking at Pearl sleeping with her rabbit, and felt their new reality crash over her. They were under the protection of a mob boss, a criminal who'd killed and would kill again. But he'd saved them, given them safety when they'd had none. That made him either the best thing that had ever happened to them, or the most dangerous. Haley was terrified it might be both. Haley didn't sleep. She sat in the chair by Pearl's bed, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall with the steady rhythm of childhood sleep, and tried to process the past 4 hours of her life. 4 hours ago, she'd been doing laundry, planning how to stretch $8 across 3 days, calculating whether she could risk staying in this town another week, or if Chen's men finding her meant it was time to run again. Now she was sitting in a penthouse that probably cost more per month than she'd earned in the past year, under the protection of a man who commanded enough fear that 3 armed enforcers had fled at the mention of his name, Greg Band. She pulled out her phone, the burner that would need replacing soon, and typed his name into Google. The results made her stomach drop. Greg Band, alleged organized crime figure. Band family controls Northside territory. Federal investigation into Band enterprises stalls due to lack of witnesses. There were photos. Greg in a suit leaving a courthouse, his lawyer beside him. Greg at a charity gala, looking like any other wealthy businessman. Greg's father, Victor Band Sr., who'd run the organization before him and had died in federal prison 15 years ago. This wasn't a small-time criminal. This was generational power. A family business built on violence and control and money that flowed through legitimate and illegitimate channels in equal measure. Haley had jumped from the frying pan into an inferno. A soft knock on the door made her jump. She crossed the sitting room and opened the door a crack, finding Mrs. Chen standing there with a tray. Mr. Band thought you might be awake, the older woman said, her voice neutral. I brought tea and soup, if you're hungry. Haley wanted to refuse pride again, that useless emotion. But the smell of the soup made her stomach clench with hunger she'd been ignoring for too long. She stepped back, letting Mrs. Chen enter. The housekeeper set the tray on the small table by the window and poured tea with practiced efficiency. Chamomile. It helps with sleep, when the mind won't quiet. Thank you. Mrs. Chen studied her with those sharp eyes that seemed to catalog everything. You're wondering if you made the right choice, coming here with Mr. Band. It wasn't a question, but Haley nodded anyway. I've worked for the Band family for 32 years, Mrs. Chen said, settling into the chair opposite Haley, with the kind of presumption that came from long service and earned trust. I worked for Victor Sr. before the federal case. I've watched Greg grow from a boy who played with toy soldiers to a man who commands real ones. That's supposed to make me feel better? No, it's supposed to give you context. Mrs. Chen poured herself tea, uninvited but somehow appropriate. Victor Sr. was a hard man, brutal when he needed to be, ruthless in business. He taught Greg that power requires strength, that weakness gets you killed, that loyalty is currency. Haley wrapped her hands around the teacup, seeking warmth. And Greg learned those lessons well. He learned them, but he also learned something his father never understood. Mrs. Chen's expression softened almost imperceptibly. He learned that power without purpose is just violence. That strength means protecting those who can't protect themselves. That loyalty flows both ways. You're telling me he's different from his father? I'm telling you that Greg Band keeps his word. When he says you're under his protection, he means it. When he says he'll handle Marcus Chen, he'll handle Marcus Chen. When he tells your daughter she's safe, she is. Mrs. Chen met Haley's eyes directly. But protection comes with expectations, and those expectations aren't negotiable. The warning beneath the kindness was clear. What expectations? Obedience to security protocols, honesty about threats or contacts from Chen's people. Trust that Mr. Band knows how to navigate this world better than you do. Mrs. Chen sipped her tea, and acceptance that your old life is over. You don't run anymore. You don't hide. You live here, under his roof, by his rules, until the situation with Chen is resolved. That could take months, years. It could take weeks, if Mr. Band handles it the way I suspect he will. Something flickered across Mrs. Chen's face, not quite approval, not quite concern. But yes, it could take longer. That's the price of safety. Haley thought about Pearl, asleep in the next room with a stuffed rabbit and a full stomach. About the past 3 years of motel rooms and constant fear, and never enough food or money or security. What if I wanted to leave? You're not a prisoner, but the moment you walk out that door, You're on your own, and Chen's men are waiting." "Mrs." Chen stood, smoothing her skirt with brisk efficiency. "Eat the soup. Sleep if you can. Tomorrow Mr. Band will explain what comes next." After she left, Haley ate the soup rich and flavorful, probably made from scratch, and drank the tea and tried not to think about the invisible cage she'd just walked into. But cages with full meals and soft beds were better than freedom with empty stomachs and constant terror. She'd learned that much in 3 years of running. She finally fell asleep in the chair around 4 a.m., her hand resting on Pearl's bed, tethering herself to the one thing that mattered more than freedom or pride, or the question of whether she'd made a deal with the devil. Haley woke to sunlight streaming through windows that stretched from floor to ceiling, and for a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then Pearl's sleepy voice cut through the confusion. "Mommy, where are we?" Haley's back screamed in protest as she straightened from the chair she'd slept in. We're somewhere safe, baby." "Is this the nice man's house, Mr. Gregg?" "Mr. Band," Haley corrected automatically, then wondered why she was bothering with formality when her daughter had spent the night in a mob boss's guest room. Pearl stretched, still clutching the white rabbit. "I'm hungry. Can we have breakfast?" Before Haley could answer, there was another soft knock. This time, when she opened the door, Mrs. Chen stood there with a garment bag and several shopping bags. "Mr. Band thought you and your daughter might need fresh clothes," the housekeeper said, handing everything to Haley with the same brisk efficiency as last night. "Breakfast will be ready in the dining room in 20 minutes. Haley looked at the bag's designer labels she recognized from windows she'd never dared enter, and felt that familiar prickle of pride and shame. "We have clothes. You have clothes you've been washing in laundromats and wearing for 3 years. Mrs. Chen's tone was matter of fact, not cruel. The door closed before Haley could argue. Inside the bags were jeans that actually fit, soft sweaters in neutral colors, underwear still in packages, practical shoes that didn't look like they'd been rescued from a thrift store dumpster. For Pearl, there were leggings and t-shirts and a pale pink dress that made Haley's throat tight. When was the last time Pearl had owned something new? Something bought just for her, not salvaged from a donation bin or marked down to nothing? She couldn't remember. They dressed in silence, Pearl delighted with her new clothes, Haley trying not to calculate what all of this cost, trying not to think about the debt she was accruing to a man who dealt in currencies she didn't understand. The dining room was ridiculous, a table that could seat 12, set for 3. Greg Band sat at the head, reading something on a tablet, dressed in dark slacks and a charcoal Henley that made him look less like a businessman and more like what he really was. Dangerous. He looked up when they entered, and something in his expression shifted when he saw Pearl in her new pink dress. "Good morning, Piccola. Did you sleep well?" Pearl nodded, shy now in the daylight, and climbed into the chair beside him rather than near Haley. The casual trust made Haley's chest ache. Mrs. Chen appeared with breakfast eggs, bacon, fresh fruit, toast, orange juice. More food than Haley and Pearl together could eat in 3 meals, laid out like it was nothing. "Eat," Greg said, his tone gentle but firm. "We have things to discuss, but not until you've had a proper meal." Pearl didn't need to be told twice. She dug in with the focused intensity of a child who'd learned not to waste food, who ate when it was available because it might not be later. Greg watched her for a moment, something unreadable crossing his face, then turned to Haley. "You didn't sleep. How would you know? Mrs. Chen reported that you were still awake at 4 when she checked the security monitors." The casual mention of surveillance should have made Haley angry. Instead, she just felt tired. "You watch us sleep? I watch the hallways, the common areas. Your suite itself is private." He sipped coffee that probably cost more per pound than Haley had spent on groceries in a month. "But I need to know if there's a security breach. That means cameras in all public areas of the penthouse." How reassuring. His eyes sharpened. "You think I saved you from Chen's men just to harm you myself? That's not how this works." "Then explain to me how this works." Haley shot back, keeping her voice low so Pearl wouldn't hear the edge in it. "Because I don't understand what you want from me, what the price is for all of this." She gestured at the food, the clothes, the penthouse around them. Greg set down his coffee with deliberate care. "Pearl, Piccola, would you like to see the game room?" "Mrs. Chen can show you." Pearl looked between her mother and Greg with the careful wariness of a child who'd learned to read adult tension. "Is Mommy mad?" "No, baby," Haley forced herself to say. "I just need to talk to Mr. Band about grown-up things. You go with Mrs. Chen." The housekeeper appeared as if summoned, probably was summoned, via some signal Haley hadn't seen, and led Pearl out. Greg waited until the door closed, then turned his full attention on Haley. "The price," he said quietly, "is very simple. You live here, under my protection, until the situation with Marcus Chen is resolved. You follow security protocols without question. You don't leave without an escort. You don't contact anyone from your old life. You don't make yourself a target. That's it? I just stay here? You stay here. You let me handle Chen, and you trust that I know what I'm doing." Haley laughed, but it sounded bitter even to her own ears. "Trust a man I met 12 hours ago. Trust a criminal. Trust someone who kills people for a living." "I don't kill people for a living," Greg corrected, his voice hardening. "I run legitimate businesses, restaurants, real estate, construction. The illegal aspects of my organization exist to protect those businesses and the people who depend on them. And yes, sometimes that requires violence. But I'm not a thug who murders indiscriminately. Just selectively. Yes, selectively. When someone threatens what's mine, when someone violates the rules that keep this city from descending into chaos, when someone like Marcus Chen thinks they can terrorize women and children to collect debts." His gray eyes were chips of flint. "Then I respond with proportional force." "Proportional force," Haley repeated. "Is that what you're planning for, Chen? Violence?" "I'm planning negotiations, backed by the credible threat of violence if he refuses reasonable terms." Greg leaned back in his chair, the picture of controlled power. "Chen is a businessman. Brutal, yes. Ruthless, certainly. But ultimately pragmatic. If I can make it more expensive for him to pursue you than to write off the debt, he'll walk away. And if he won't, then I make it impossible for him to pursue you, by any means necessary." The promise of violence hung in the air between them, undeniable and absolute. "What happens to Pearl if this goes wrong?" Haley asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "If Chen comes for us anyway, if your proportional force isn't enough?" Greg's expression transformed the controlled mask cracking to reveal something raw and fierce underneath. "Nothing happens to Pearl. She stays safe if I have to burn Chen's entire operation to the ground. She stays safe if I have to call in every favor, spend every dollar, spill every drop of blood in this city. Do you understand me, Haley? Your daughter is under my protection now. That's not conditional. That's not negotiable. That's absolute." The intensity of his conviction should have been terrifying. Instead, Haley felt something in her chest loosen a knot of fear she'd been carrying for 3 years, finally starting to unravel. "Why?" she asked again, needing to understand. "Why does she matter so much to you?" Greg was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant. "My sister, Lucia, the one who died from smoke damage. She was Pearl's age when our house burned, 4 years old, small and blonde and brave. She held my hand while the flames were everywhere, and she didn't cry. She was so brave." His voice cracked almost imperceptibly on the last word. "When the firefighters pulled us out, she smiled at me, said, 'We're okay, Greg. We made it.' But we hadn't made it. Not really. Her lungs were destroyed. The next 12 years were hospitals and oxygen tanks and watching her fade piece by piece." He met Haley's eyes. "When Pearl begged me not to hurt you, when she stood between you and danger even though she was terrified, I saw Lucia, and I thought I can't save my sister, but I can save this child. So I will." Haley felt tears slip down her cheeks before she could stop them. "She's all I have. My whole world. If something happened to her, nothing will happen to her." Greg reached across the table, his hand covering hers with surprising gentleness. "I give you my word, Haley. Pearl is safe. You're both safe, and I keep my word." The touch was electric, warm, and solid, and the first time in 3 years that another adult had offered comfort instead of demands. Haley found herself wanting to believe him, wanting to trust this dangerous man who spoke about violence and protection in the same breath. "Okay," she whispered. "We'll stay. We'll follow your rules. We'll trust you." "Good." He squeezed her hand once, then released it. "Now eat your breakfast. You're too thin, and if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of Pearl." It was so matter-of-fact, so practical, that Haley almost laughed. Instead, she picked up her fork and started eating, and for the first time in 3 years, she didn't calculate the cost of each bite. The rest of the morning passed in a surreal haze. Mrs. Chen showed them the penthouse, the game room where Pearl immediately gravitated to a dollhouse that was probably worth more than their car. The library with floor-to-ceiling books, the gym that Greg apparently used at 5 a.m. every morning, the balcony garden that shouldn't exist this high up but somehow did. Pearl was delighted with everything, her earlier trauma already fading in the resilient way of children. Haley watched her daughter laugh and play and explore, and felt the tight band around her chest loosen another notch. Maybe this would be okay. Maybe they'd found sanctuary in the last place she expected. Around noon, Greg found them in the game room. I need to leave for a few hours. Business meetings. The meetings with Chen. Haley understood. Will you be safe? Something flickered in his eyes, surprise. Maybe. That she'd asked. I'll have Victor and 4 others with me. Chen might be angry, but he's not stupid enough to make a move in a public meeting. When will you be back? By dinner. Mrs. Chen will stay with you. If anything happens, anything at all, she knows what to do. He crouched beside Pearl, who was arranging miniature furniture in the dollhouse. I have to go to work, Piccola, but I'll be back soon. Will you keep your mother company while I'm gone? Pearl looked up at him with complete trust. Okay. Will you bring me a present? Pearl, Haley started, mortified, but Greg just smiled. What kind of present would you like? A book, about brave princesses. Not ones who need rescuing, but ones who do the rescuing. His smile widened into something genuine and warm. I think I can arrange that. He straightened, and for a moment his hand brushed Haley's shoulder, brief, careful, but deliberate. I'll be back soon, don't worry. Then he was gone, and Haley was alone with Pearl and Mrs. Chen in a penthouse that felt too big and too quiet without Greg's presence anchoring it. He'll be fine, Mrs. Chen said, reading Haley's expression with unsettling accuracy. Mr. Band has been handling men like Marcus Chen since he was 23. This is what he does. Handle people. Protect his territory. Maintain order. Ensure that those under his protection stay safe. The housekeeper's expression softened slightly. You and your daughter are part of that protection now. He won't let anything happen to you. Haley wanted to ask how Mrs. Chen could be so sure, but Pearl called for help reaching a piece of the dollhouse. And the moment passed. The afternoon stretched long and anxious. Haley tried to read, tried to let Pearl's happiness distract her, tried not to look at the clock every 5 minutes. What if the meeting went wrong? What if Chen refused negotiations? What if Greg didn't come back? At 6:15, the elevator chimed. Haley's heart jumped into her throat until she saw Greg step out, Victor beside him. Both men were unharmed, though Greg looked tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. Pearl ran to him immediately. You're back. Did you bring me a book? He pulled a wrapped package from his jacket. I did. A whole series, actually, about a princess who rescues her kingdom with cleverness instead of a sword. Pearl tore into the wrapping with childish enthusiasm, revealing 3 picture books that made her squeal with delight. Over her head, Greg's eyes met Haley's. It's done, he said quietly. Chen has agreed to negotiations. We meet tomorrow to settle terms. Relief made Haley's knees weak. He agreed? He agreed. Something dark flickered across Greg's face. Let's just say I made a very compelling argument about why pursuing you further would be bad for his business interests. Haley didn't ask what that meant. Didn't want to know what kind of pressure it took to make a man like Marcus Chen back down. She just watched Pearl show Greg the dollhouse she'd spent the afternoon arranging, watched him crouch down to admire her work with genuine interest, and thought, this is our life now. This dangerous man, this gilded cage, this strange, terrifying safety. And God help her. She wasn't sure she wanted to leave. The penthouse wasn't just a home, it was a fortress wrapped in Italian marble and floor-to-ceiling bulletproof glass. Haley stood in the center of the living room, her worn duffel bag clutched in white-knuckled hands, feeling like an imposter in a museum exhibit labeled, How the Other Half Lives. Pearl, however, had no such hesitations. Mommy, look! Her daughter's voice echoed off the vaulted ceilings as she pressed her face against the windows overlooking the city. We're higher than the birds. We're in the sky. Greg Band stood near the entrance, his suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars that told stories Haley wasn't sure she wanted to hear. He was watching Pearl with an expression that didn't quite fit the dangerous man who'd walked out of that warehouse covered in another man's blood. It was soft, almost tender. The glass is reinforced, he said, his voice that same low rumble that had ordered men to stand down, to shoot, to handle Marcus Chen's disposal. She can't break it even if she tries. Haley's throat tightened. I wasn't worried about the glass. His eyes storm gray, an unsettlingly direct cut to hers. Then what are you worried about? Everything, the word screamed in her mind, but she swallowed it down. She was worried about the debt she'd just incurred to a man who solved problems with bullets. Worried about her daughter calling a killer the nice man. Worried about what it meant that she'd felt safer in his arms while he'd carried her from that warehouse than she'd felt in 3 years of running. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. How long do we need to stay here? Haley asked instead, her voice steadier than she felt. Greg moved toward the windows, his gait that of a predator even in casual clothes. He stopped beside Pearl, looking down at the city spread beneath them like a kingdom he owned. Knowing his reputation, he probably did own half of it. Until Marcus Chen's organization understands that you're untouchable, he said. Until every low-life debt collector and two-bit enforcer knows that touching Haley Hoffen means answering to me. The way he said her name with a weight that implied ownership, protection, something she couldn't quite define, sent an unwelcome shiver down her spine. And how long does that take? He turned, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. As long as it takes. Pearl tugged on Greg's pant leg, fearless in the way only children who'd survived monsters could be. She'd learned early that the biggest, scariest-looking people were sometimes the safest. Mr. Greg, where do we sleep? Is there a bed for me and Mommy? His expression transformed again, that dangerous edge melting into something approaching gentleness. He crouched to her eye level, bringing his 6'3" frame down to meet a 4-year-old's gaze. You have your own room, Piccola. Would you like to see it? Pearl's eyes went wide. My own room? Just for me? Just for you? Haley watched, her heart doing something painful in her chest. As this dangerous man, took her daughter's small hand and led her down a hallway lined with abstract art that probably cost more than Haley had earned in her entire life. She followed at a distance, the duffel bag suddenly feeling heavier. The room Greg opened was not what Haley expected. It wasn't cold or minimal or adult pretending to understand children. It was perfect. A twin bed with a white iron frame and a pale pink comforter dotted with silver stars. A bookshelf already stocked with children's books, new ones, not donated cast-offs. A toy chest in the corner. Soft lighting that created a warm glow instead of harsh shadows. How? The word escaped Haley before she could stop it. Greg straightened, his hand still holding Pearl's. I made a call. People moved quickly. In 3 hours you furnished an entire child's bedroom? I'm efficient. Pearl released his hand and ran to the bookshelf, pulling out a picture book about a brave little mouse. Mommy, look, it's the one you couldn't afford at the store. Remember? I said it was okay, we didn't need it. The memory hit like a fist. 2 weeks ago, before Marcus Chen's men had shown up at their motel room door. They'd been at a thrift store, and Pearl had found that book new, somehow mixed in with the donated items, probably a mistake. $8. $8 that Haley needed for gas money, for the next night's motel room, for the power bars that constituted dinner. It's okay, Mommy, I don't need a book. You read me stories from your head. Those are better. And here it was. In a bedroom that had been created specifically for her daughter in the space of an afternoon. How did you know? Haley's voice cracked. Greg's gaze was steady, unflinching. I had someone follow you for the past week. Protection detail, watching for Chen's men. They documented your routine. What Pearl liked, what she needed, what you couldn't afford to give her. The invasion of privacy should have made her angry. Instead, she felt tears burning behind her eyes, hot and unwelcome. You've been watching us? Protecting you, he corrected. There's a difference. Pearl had discovered the toy chest and was methodically removing its contents, stuffed animals, building blocks, art supplies with the systematic joy of a child who'd learned not to expect nice things. Greg gestured toward the door. Your room is across the hall. Pearl's bathroom connects to yours. The whole suite is secured, bulletproof windows, reinforced walls, panic button in both rooms that goes directly to my security team. A panic button. Haley laughed, but it sounded hollow. In case what? Marcus Chen breaks into your fortress? In case you need help, and I'm not here. The implication settled between them, heavy and undeniable. He wouldn't always be here. He had a business to run, an empire to maintain, enemies to manage. But he was giving her the tools to survive in his absence. Mr. Greg? Pearl's voice was small, uncertain. She was holding a stuffed rabbit, white and soft, with long ears and button eyes. Can I keep this? Greg's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Everything in this room is yours, Pearl. You don't have to ask permission. Everything? Everything. She hugged the rabbit to her chest, and Haley saw her daughter's walls, the ones built by 3 years of instability, of learning that nothing was permanent, start to crack just slightly. Thank you, Pearl whispered. Greg nodded once, then turned to Haley. Dinner is at 7. My housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, no relation, will bring up options. She'll also provide clothes in your size by tomorrow morning. You don't have to. I do. The words were firm, brooking no argument. You're under my protection now. That means you're provided for. Completely. He moved toward the door, then paused. The kitchen is stocked. If Pearl gets hungry before dinner, help yourself. There's a playroom down the hall, second door on the left. Security team is stationed at the elevator and the stairwell. Don't leave the penthouse without telling me first. It wasn't a request. It was an order. After he left, Haley stood in the doorway of Pearl's new bedroom, watching her daughter arrange stuffed animals on the bed with the care of someone handling precious artifacts. Mommy? Pearl looked up, her blue eyes so much like her father's, so much like the man who disappeared the moment things got hard serious. Are we safe now? Haley crossed the room and pulled her daughter into her arms, breathing in the scent of cheap motel shampoo and childhood. I don't know, baby, but we're safer than we were. I like Mr. Gregg. He has kind eyes. Haley thought about those eyes, storm gray and capable of terrifying coldness when he'd faced down Chen's men in that warehouse. The same eyes that had softened when Pearl had begged him not to hurt her mother. He's complicated. What's complicated? It means he's not easy to understand. Pearl considered this with the grave thoughtfulness of a 4-year-old philosopher. I think I understand him. He's like the bears in my stories. Big and scary on the outside, but soft inside if you're nice to them. If only it were that simple. Dinner was an exercise in surreal domestication. Mrs. Chen, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and an expression that suggested she'd seen everything and was unimpressed by most of it, had laid out a spread that made Haley's throat tight. Roasted chicken, actual vegetables that weren't canned, mashed potatoes that were real and not from a box, fresh bread that was still warm. Pearl sat at the massive dining table, her feet dangling a foot off the floor, staring at her plate like it might disappear. Gregg sat at the head of the table, dressed now in dark slacks and a charcoal Henley that somehow made him look more dangerous than the blood-spattered suit had. Less civilized, more primal. Pearl, he said, his voice gentle. You need to eat. It's so much food, she whispered. What if we can't finish it? Then we save it for later. Or tomorrow. It doesn't go to waste, and no one will be angry. Haley's chest ached. Her daughter had learned to calculate food scarcity, to ration, to never take more than necessary because there might not be more coming. Eat, baby, Haley encouraged, her own appetite non-existent despite the delicious smells. As much as you want. Pearl took a tentative bite of chicken, then another, then started eating with the focused intensity of someone who'd been hungry too long. Gregg watched her for a moment, something unreadable crossing his face, then turned to Haley. You need to eat too. I'm not hungry. You're in shock. Adrenaline crash. Your body needs fuel. He pushed the breadbasket toward her. Eat. She should have bristled at the command, but she was too exhausted. She took a piece of bread, tearing it into small pieces more than eating it. Tell me about Marcus Chen, Gregg said, his tone conversational despite the dangerous topic. How you ended up owing him money. Haley glanced at Pearl, who was absorbed in her dinner, then lowered her voice. My ex-husband, Derek. He was into gambling, bad investments, borrowing from the wrong people. When he couldn't pay, he disappeared. Left me with a 4-year-old and a $100,000 debt to a loan shark. Chen, who decided that since Derek was gone, I inherited the debt, plus interest, 20% per month, compounding. Gregg's expression darkened. Predatory lending. That's one way to put it. I've been running for 3 years, working cash jobs, staying in cheap motels, never in one place long enough for them to find us. Her voice cracked. Until they did. What did Derek do with the money? Gambled most of it. Invested the rest in a can't-miss cryptocurrency scheme that turned out to be fraud. Lost everything. Then borrowed more, trying to win it back. The familiar anger burned in her chest. He was always chasing the next big score, the easy money. Never thought about Pearl, about what would happen if he failed. Men like that don't think beyond themselves. Haley looked at him, this man who'd killed for her, who'd brought her into his fortress, who was feeding her child like it was the most natural thing in the world. What kind of man are you, Gregg Band? He set down his fork, meeting her gaze directly. The kind who pays his debts, who protects what's his, who doesn't walk away when things get difficult. I'm not yours. Aren't you? He leaned back in his chair, and the casual posture didn't disguise the predatory focus in his eyes. I killed for you tonight, Haley. Spilled blood to keep you safe. In my world, that creates a bond. An obligation. I didn't ask you to kill anyone. No, your daughter did. She begged me not to hurt you, and that made both of you mine to protect. The possessiveness in his tone should have terrified her. Instead, it ignited something low in her belly that she absolutely could not afford to feel. Mommy? Pearl's voice cut through the tension. Can I have more potatoes? Haley forced a smile. Of course, baby. Mrs. Chen appeared like a ghost, refilling Pearl's plate with the efficiency of someone who'd served dangerous men her entire life. She gave Greg a look that might have been approval or warning, it was hard to tell, then disappeared back into the kitchen. After dinner, Greg showed them the playroom. It was obscene in its abundance, every toy a child could want. Games and puzzles and art supplies arranged with meticulous care. Pearl stood in the doorway, overwhelmed. This is all for kids who visit? She asked. This is for you, Greg corrected. But why? You don't even know me. He crouched again, bringing himself to her eye level. It seemed to be his default, with Pearl making himself smaller, less threatening, meeting her where she was. Because you were brave, he said simply. You stood between your mother and danger. You asked me, a stranger, for help when you were terrified. That kind of courage deserves to be rewarded. Pearl considered this seriously. My mommy says courage isn't the same as not being scared. It's being scared and doing the thing anyway. Your mother is right. Are you ever scared? Haley held her breath, wondering how he'd answer. Greg's expression shifted, something raw and honest, breaking through the controlled mask. Yes. I'm scared of failing people who depend on me. Of not being strong enough when it matters most. Of losing people I care about. Like us? His jaw tightened. Like you. Pearl threw her arms around his neck in an impulsive hug that made him freeze. For a heartbeat, Greg Band, feared Mafia boss, killer, emperor of the city's underworld, looked utterly lost. Then his arms came up slowly, carefully, and he returned the embrace with a gentleness that made Haley's eyes burn. When Pearl pulled back, she was smiling. Thank you for saving us, Mr. Greg. Just Greg is fine, Piccola. What does that mean? Piccola? Little one, Pearl giggled. I like it. Can you call me that? If you'd like. Haley watched this exchange, her heart doing something dangerous in her chest. This man, this killer, was being gentle with her daughter in a way Derek never had been. Was looking at Pearl like she mattered, like her happiness was important, like protecting her was a privilege rather than a burden. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. Later, after Pearl had finally crashed from the excitement and sugar, Haley found herself unable to sleep. The bed in her room was too soft, too big, too everything. After 3 years of motel mattresses and sleeping in the car, she wandered out into the living room, drawn by the glow of city lights through those massive windows. Greg was there, standing in the darkness, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He'd changed into sleep pants and a t-shirt that stretched across shoulders built for violence. Can't sleep? His voice didn't startle her. Somehow she'd known he'd be here. The quiet is too loud, she said, moving to stand beside him. The city below pulsed with life, cars and lights and people living their normal, uncomplicated existences. I know what you mean. They stood in silence for a moment, and Haley found herself studying his profile. Strong jawline shadowed with stubble, a nose that had been broken at least once, a scar that cut through his left eyebrow. He looked like what he was, a man forged in violence. Can I ask you something? She ventured. You can ask. I might not answer. Why did you help us? Really? It can't just be because Pearl begged you. Greg took a slow sip of his drink. Scotch, probably something expensive and aged. You want the truth? Always. He turned to face her fully, and the intensity of his gaze in the darkness made her breath catch. Because I saw something in Pearl that reminded me of my sister, Lucia. She was 6 when our father's enemies came for him. Burned our house to the ground trying to kill him. Haley's heart clenched. Did she? She survived. Barely. But she was never the same. The fear changed her, made her timid, anxious, unable to trust anyone. His hand tightened around the glass. She's 28 now, lives in a care facility upstate. Can't handle crowds, can't sleep without medication, can't exist in the normal world because of what she witnessed as a child. Greg, I'm sorry. When Pearl begged me not to hurt you, he continued, his voice rough, when she stood there terrified but brave, trying to protect you from a man 3 times her size, I saw Lucia. Before the fire, before the fear broke her, and I thought, I can't save my sister from what happened to her, but maybe I can save this child from the same fate. The honesty was devastating. Haley felt tears slip down her cheeks before she could stop them. "She's not broken," Greg said, softer now. "Pearl, despite everything you've been through, everything she's witnessed, she's still whole, still brave, still capable of trust. That's because of you, Haley. Because you protected her, shielded her, kept her childhood intact, even while running for your lives. I didn't do enough. She's learned to ration food, to be afraid of strangers, to sleep with her shoes on in case we need to run. She's learned to be smart, to be careful. But she hasn't learned to be afraid of the world itself. That's a miracle." His hand came up, thumb brushing away the tears on her cheek with surprising gentleness. The touch sent electricity through her nerve endings. "You did that," he murmured. "You kept her human. That's more than most parents manage in perfect circumstances." Haley found herself leaning into his palm, seeking the warmth and solidity of another human being after years of carrying everything alone. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "Of this, of you, of what it means to be under your protection." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp. But I'm also—" She hesitated, then forced herself to be honest. "I feel safer with you than I have in 3 years. And I don't know what to do with that." Greg's other hand came up, framing her face with both palms now. He was close, too close, and she could smell him. Expensive cologne layered over something darker, more primal, gunpowder and danger and heat. "You don't have to do anything with it," he said, his voice dropping to that low rumble that vibrated in her bones. "Just let yourself breathe. Let yourself rest. Let me handle the threats while you remember how to exist without looking over your shoulder. What if I can't? What if I'm too broken to ever feel normal again? Then we'll be broken together." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Then Greg stepped back, breaking the moment. The distance between them suddenly cold. "You should sleep," he said, his tone back to neutral. "Tomorrow I need to take you and Pearl to a secure location for a few days. Chen's organization will be looking for retaliation. We need to be somewhere they can't find us." "Where?" "My compound upstate, near where Lucia lives. It's completely secure, 20 acres, armed guards, surveillance system that would make the Pentagon jealous." He drained his scotch. "Pack light. We leave at dawn." "Greg, sleep, Haley. We'll talk more tomorrow." He walked away, leaving her standing by the windows with her heart pounding and her body aching for a touch that had been too brief, too careful, too controlled. She was in so much trouble. The meeting with Marcus Chen was scheduled for 2 p.m. At a neutral location, a private dining room in one of the city's oldest Italian restaurants, owned by a family that predated both the band and Chen organizations, and maintained strict neutrality in territorial disputes. Greg left at 1:30, dressed in a charcoal suit that made him look like death in expensive tailoring. He'd spent the morning making phone calls in his office, his voice a low rumble that occasionally rose with sharp authority. Haley had learned to read the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened when something displeased him. Whatever was happening with Chen, it wasn't going smoothly. "I'll be back by 5, he told her, standing in the entryway while Victor and 3 other men waited by the elevator. "Stay inside. Don't answer the door for anyone except Mrs. Chen. Don't go near the windows." "You think Chen would try something here?" Haley asked. Pearl playing with her new books in the game room, blissfully unaware of the tension. "I think Chen is unpredictable when his pride is wounded, and I wounded it by claiming you in front of his men." Greg's hand came up, cupping her cheek with surprising gentleness. "I won't let anything happen to you, but I need you to be careful." The touch sent electricity down her spine. 3 days in his penthouse, and she still wasn't used to these casual intimacies, the way he'd brush past her in the kitchen, the way his hand would rest on her lower back when guiding her through doorways, the way he looked at her like she was something precious he needed to protect. "Be safe," she whispered. His thumb stroked across her cheekbone once, then he was gone. The afternoon crawled by with agonizing slowness. Haley tried to focus on Pearl, reading the new books 3 times each, helping her draw pictures of brave princesses, making snacks in a kitchen stocked with more food than they'd seen in 3 years combined. But her mind kept drifting to that meeting, to Greg sitting across from Marcus Chen, negotiating over her like she was a commodity to be traded. The thought made her stomach churn, but she understood the reality. In their world, that's exactly what she was. A debt, an asset, a pawn in a game played by dangerous men. At 3:15, Mrs. Chen's phone rang. The housekeeper's face went carefully blank as she listened, and Haley's heart started hammering. "Understood," Mrs. Chen said quietly. "Yes, sir. We'll initiate lockdown protocol." She hung up and turned to Haley. "Take Pearl to the safe room. Now." What's happening? Now, Mrs. Hoffen. The steel in her voice left no room for argument. Haley scooped up Pearl, who immediately sensed something was wrong. Mommy, what's happening? We're playing a game, baby. A hiding game. We need to be very quiet, okay? Mrs. Chen led them to Greg's office, pressing a section of the bookshelf that swung open to reveal a reinforced steel door. She punched in a code, and the door opened into a windowless room lined with monitors, supplies, and what looked like enough weapons to start a small war. Inside. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except Mr. Band or myself. We each have a specific knock pattern. Watch the monitor. Haley's hands shook as she pulled Pearl into the safe room. What about you? I have my own protocols to follow. Mrs. Chen's expression softened fractionally. You're safe here. The room is soundproof, bulletproof, and has its own air supply. You could survive a siege for 3 days if necessary. Mrs. Chen. Lock the door, Mrs. Hoffen. Keep your daughter safe. Mr. Band will handle the rest. The door closed with a heavy thunk, and Haley heard the locks engage from the outside. She stood in the sterile light of the safe room, Pearl clutching her leg, and tried not to let her daughter see how terrified she was. The monitors showed different views of the penthouse, the living room, the kitchen, the hallway outside the elevator. All empty, quiet, normal. Then one of the screens flickered the parking garage, 42 floors below. 3 black SUVs pulled in, moving with military precision. Men poured out, and even through the grainy security footage, Haley could see they were armed, not handguns tucked into waistbands like Chen's men at the laundromat, rifles, shotguns, serious weaponry. Mommy, I'm scared, Pearl whimpered. Haley pulled her daughter close, pressing Pearl's face into her shoulder so she couldn't see the monitors. It's okay, baby. We're safe. Mr. Gregg made sure we're safe. On the screen, the men approached the elevator bank. One of them produced something, a device of some kind, and attached it to the control panel. Sparks flew. The elevator doors opened. They were coming up. Haley's mind raced. Where was Gregg? Where was Victor? Where was the security team that was supposed to protect them? Then she understood. This wasn't random. This was coordinated. Chen had lured Gregg away with the meeting while sending a team to the penthouse, a 2-pronged attack designed to split Band's resources. The elevator started rising. 42 floors. They had maybe 3 minutes. Another monitor showed the hallway outside Gregg's office. Mrs. Chen appeared, moving with surprising speed for a woman in her 60s. She disappeared from view, and Haley realized she was taking a defensive position. She's going to fight them. An unarmed housekeeper against a squad of armed men. Haley's breath came in short gasps. She wanted to do something, help somehow, but she had Pearl to protect. Her daughter's safety had to come first. The elevator reached the penthouse. The doors opened, and 8 men poured into the living room, weapons raised, moving with tactical precision. Mrs. Chen appeared on one of the monitors, not in the hallway, but in the kitchen. She was holding something small in her hand. For a moment, Haley thought it was a phone. Then Mrs. Chen pressed a button, and the entire penthouse erupted in chaos. Steel shutters slammed down over every window with a deafening crash that Haley could hear even through the safe room's soundproofing. Lights flared bright, then went red, emergency lighting that turned everything the color of blood. And from hidden speakers came a sound like an air horn, impossibly loud, disorienting. The men on the monitor stumbled, covering their ears, their tactical advantage evaporating in the face of Gregg's security protocols. Mrs. Chen moved with lethal efficiency, producing a small pistol from somewhere and firing twice. 2 men went down before the others could react. She disappeared into the hallway, and the monitors showed her running toward Gregg's office, toward the safe room. Toward Haley and Pearl. 3 of the remaining men gave chase. On the monitor, Haley watched Mrs. Chen reach the office door, start to turn. A man appeared behind her. The butt of his rifle came down on the back of her head with sickening force. Mrs. Chen crumpled. No, Haley breathed. The men entered Gregg's office. 5 of them now, weapons raised, searching. One of them walked straight to the bookshelf, running his hands along it with practiced familiarity. He found the latch. The bookshelf swung open, revealing the steel safe room door. Come out, Mrs. Hoffen, a voice called, muffled through the reinforced metal. We're not here to hurt you. Mr. Chen just wants to talk about the debt. Come out peacefully, and no one else gets hurt. Pearl started to cry, and Haley clamped her hand over her daughter's mouth, not hard, just enough to muffle the sound. She looked at the monitors desperately, searching for help that wasn't coming. One screen showed the parking garage. More SUVs were pulling in, but these were different. Sleek, black, familiar. Victor's vehicle. And behind it, 4 more. Greg's team had arrived. "We can cut through this door, Mrs. Hoffman," the voice continued, more irritated now. "But that'll take time and make a lot of noise. Be smart. Think about your daughter. You really want her to see what happens when we have to force our way in?" Haley's mind raced. The safe room had weapons, she could see them mounted on the wall. But she didn't know how to use them. Didn't know if she could shoot a man, even to protect Pearl. On the monitor, Greg appeared in the parking garage, stepping out of his SUV with controlled fury radiating from every line of his body. He was on his phone, barking orders, and men were spreading out with military precision. The elevator. They'd have to take the elevator up. That would take time Haley might not have. "Last warning, Mrs. Hoffman. Chen's orders were to bring you in unharmed. But if you make this difficult, those orders can change." Haley looked at her daughter, at Pearl's terrified face pressed against her shoulder, and made a decision. She grabbed one of the weapons from the wall, a shotgun, heavy and unfamiliar in her hands. She checked it the way she'd seen in movies, making sure it was loaded. Then she positioned herself directly in front of Pearl, weapon raised. If they got through that door, she'd shoot. She didn't know if she could hit anything, didn't know if she could actually pull the trigger. But for Pearl, she'd try. On the monitor, she watched the men in Greg's office produce a cutting torch. Sparks flew as they started on the door's locking mechanism. And in the parking garage, Greg entered the elevator with Victor and 6 others, all armed, all focused. The race was on. Would Greg reach them before Chen's men cut through the door? Haley tightened her grip on the shotgun and prayed. The cutting torch made it through the first lock before Greg's team reached the penthouse floor. Haley watched on the monitors as the elevator doors opened and 8 men poured out, weapons drawn. But they moved with controlled precision, not the frantic desperation of Chen's team. These were professionals, and they had the advantage of knowing the terrain. Greg appeared on screen, and even through the grainy security footage, Haley could see the cold fury on his face. He gestured sharply, and his men spread out, flanking the hallway that led to his office. "Contact," she heard Victor's voice crackle through a speaker she hadn't noticed. 8 hostiles in the residence, 2 down, 6 active. Mrs. Chen is injured but alive. Hostiles have reached the safe room and are attempting breach. Greg's response was ice. "No survivors who fired a weapon. The rest, I want alive for questioning. Move." What happened next was brutally efficient. Greg's team entered the office with overwhelming force. The cutting torch clattered to the floor as Chen's men spun to face the new threat. But they were cornered, trapped between the safe room door and Greg's approaching soldiers. Gunfire erupted. Haley flinched, pulling Pearl tighter, covering her daughter's ears even though the safe room's soundproofing reduced the shots to muffled pops. It was over in 30 seconds. 4 of Chen's men were down, not moving. 2 had dropped their weapons, hands raised in surrender, and Greg stood in the doorway of his office, his suit somehow still immaculate, a gun in his hand that he hadn't needed to fire. He looked directly at the camera above the safe room door. "Haley, it's me. You're safe. Open the door." But Haley couldn't move, couldn't process. Her hands shook so badly the shotgun nearly slipped from her grip. "Haley." His voice was gentler now, patient. "I'm going to knock. The pattern is 3 short, 2 long, 1 short. That's how you'll know it's me. Watch the monitor and listen. 3 short knocks, 2 long, 1 short." On the screen, she watched Greg's hand move in perfect synchronization with the sounds. Her fingers fumbled with the lock mechanism. It took 3 tries before she got it open. The door swung inward, and Greg was there, looking more intensely alive than she'd ever seen him. His eyes scanned her, first checking for injuries, for trauma, then dropped to Pearl. "Are you hurt?" His voice was still gentle, controlled, even though Haley could see the adrenaline thrumming through him. "We're okay. We're not hurt." He stepped into the safe room and pulled them both into his arms carefully, like they were made of glass. Haley felt his heart hammering against her cheek, felt the controlled tremor in his hands as they pressed against her back. "I'm sorry," he said roughly. "I should have anticipated this. Should have left more security. Should have—" "We're okay," Haley interrupted. "Mrs. Chen is being tended to. Concussion, but she'll recover." He pulled back, cupping Haley's face between his palms. "Did they threaten you? Did they touch the door?" "They were cutting through the lock. Another few minutes and they would have—" His jaw clenched so hard she heard his teeth grind. "Another few minutes and I would have killed every single one of them." Slowly. Pearl peeked out from where she'd buried her face in Haley's shoulder. "Mr. Gregg? Are the bad men gone?" His expression transformed instantly, the cold fury melting into something almost tender. "They're gone, Piccola. And they won't be coming back. Did you save us?" "I did. With help from Victor and the team. We'll always save you, Pearl. Always." She reached for him with grabby hands, and Gregg took her with the careful gentleness of someone handling something infinitely precious. Pearl wrapped her arms around his neck and started to cry. Not the terrified sobbing from earlier, but the release of a child who'd been brave as long as she could and could finally let go. "Shh, Piccola. You're safe. I have you. Nothing's going to hurt you." Haley watched this dangerous man comfort her daughter, watched him press a kiss to Pearl's hair with tenderness that didn't match the 4 bodies cooling in his office, and felt something crack open in her chest. This was real. Whatever Gregg felt for them for Pearl, for her it wasn't just obligation or the ghost of his dead sister. It was genuine. And God help her. Haley was falling for him. "We need to leave," Gregg said, still holding Pearl but looking at Haley. "This penthouse is compromised. Chen knows the location, knows the security systems. We're going to the compound upstate. It's more secure, more defensible." "What about Mrs. Chen?" "She'll come with us. Victor's getting her medical attention now." His eyes hardened. "And then I'm going to have a very different conversation with Marcus Chen than the one we had this afternoon." The promise of violence was clear. This wasn't about negotiations anymore. This was war. The compound was exactly what Gregg had promised. 20 acres of fortified property in upstate New York, surrounded by forest and accessible only through a guarded checkpoint that would make military installations jealous. The main house was beautiful, in a stark, modern way. All glass and stone and clean lines, designed to blend into the landscape while being absolutely impenetrable. Guest houses dotted the property, and Haley could see armed men patrolling the perimeter with disciplined efficiency. "Overkill?" Gregg asked, reading her expression as they drove through the gates. "Necessary," Haley corrected quietly. Pearl had fallen asleep in her arms during the 2-hour drive, exhausted from trauma and adrenaline. Inside, the compound was warmly furnished despite its fortress nature. Mrs. Chen was already there. Victor had driven her up separately with a bandage on her head and bruises darkening her jaw, but moving with her usual efficiency. "Your suite is on the 2nd floor," she told Haley, barely acknowledging her injuries. "East wing. I've prepared Pearl's room adjacent to yours. Mrs. Chen, you should be resting." "I rest when Mr. Band is secure." The housekeeper's tone left no room for argument. "Until then, I work." Gregg showed them to their rooms personally. The suite was smaller than the penthouse, but somehow more comfortable. Large windows overlooked the forest, and Pearl's room had been carefully prepared with stuffed animals and books and a nightlight that projected stars on the ceiling. "How did you have time to prepare all this?" Haley asked as she laid Pearl on the bed. "I didn't. I called ahead when Chen's men entered the parking garage. Staff here moved quickly." He leaned against the doorframe, watching Pearl sleep. "I bought this property 3 years ago, after what happened to Mrs. Chen's predecessor." "What happened?" His expression went dark. "A rival organization took her hostage, tried to use her as leverage against me. By the time we got her back," he didn't finish the sentence, "didn't need to. I learned that the people in my household need better protection, hence the compound, hence the security measures, hence my absolute insistence that you follow protocols without question. I'm sorry I doubted you. You shouldn't apologize for having survival instincts, but you should trust that mine are better." He straightened. "We need to talk. Downstairs. Pearl will be safe. I've assigned a guard to this hallway, and Mrs. Chen is monitoring the security feeds." Haley followed him down to an office that looked like a command center. Monitors covered one wall, showing various angles of the compound. Maps were spread across a large table, marked with locations and annotations she didn't understand. Victor was there, along with 2 other men she recognized from the penthouse rescue. "Haley, this is Marcus and James. They head my security operations." Gregg gestured to chairs. "Sit. You need to understand what's happening." She sat, her hands clasped tight in her lap to hide their shaking. "Chen's attack today was retaliation," Gregg began without preamble. "But it was also a message. He's not willing to negotiate. He sees your debt as his property, and my claiming of you as an act of war. So what happens now? Now we end this, permanently." Gregg's tone was matter-of-fact, discussing violence like it was a business transaction. "I'm going to make Chen an offer." He forgives your debt completely, pulls his men back, and acknowledges that you're under ban protection indefinitely. In exchange, I give him control of the shipping routes through the North Harbor territory that's technically mine but that he's wanted for years. Will he accept? No. His pride is wounded. He'll refuse on principle. Greg leaned against the table, arms crossed. Which is why the offer is a formality. What happens next is the real negotiation. Victor spoke up, his voice a low rumble. We've been mapping Chen's operations for the past 48 hours. 6 primary locations: the docks warehouse, 2 gambling operations, a loan office, and his personal residence. We hit all 6 simultaneously. Disable his cash flow, disrupt his operations, make it clear that continuing this fight will cost him everything. Haley's breath caught. You're going to war over me. We're going to war over a principle, Greg corrected. Chen attacked my home, threatened people under my protection, put my housekeeper in the hospital. This stopped being about you the moment he sent armed men into my penthouse. But I'm still the reason. The reason is that Chen doesn't respect boundaries. The reason is that men like him need to be reminded that some lines shouldn't be crossed. Greg's gray eyes were steel. You and Pearl are the catalyst, yes, but this was inevitable. Chen has been testing my limits for months. This just gave me the excuse to respond. Haley looked at the maps, at the plans for coordinated attacks, at the casual discussion of violence, and felt the full weight of what she'd brought into these people's lives. I should leave, she said quietly. Take Pearl and disappear. Go somewhere Chen can't find us. Then you don't have to risk your people, your organization. No, Greg's voice cracked like a whip. You're not leaving. You're not running. You're staying exactly where I can protect you. But if we're gone, then Chen wins. He learns that attacking my home gets results, that threatening my people is an effective strategy. And the next time someone wants to hurt me, they'll know exactly how to do it. He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the small space. You stay, Haley. You stay because leaving would make you a target forever. Because running means Pearl grows up afraid. Because I said you're under my protection, and I keep my word. Even if it starts a war, the war started the moment Chen put a price on your head. I'm just finishing it. Haley stood, needing to move, to process. What if you lose? What if Chen's stronger than you think? What if... Greg caught her shoulders, stopping her frantic pacing. I won't lose. I can't lose. Because losing means Pearl ends up in Chen's hands, and I will burn this entire city to ash before I let that happen. The fierce conviction in his voice made her believe him, made her understand that this wasn't just about territory or pride. Somewhere in the past 3 days, Pearl had become important to him. Really important. And maybe Haley's heart hammered at the thought. Maybe she had too. When? She whispered. When does this happen? Tonight. Midnight. Simultaneous strikes on all 6 locations. He released her shoulders but stayed close. Victor will coordinate from here. I'll lead the team hitting Chen's residence personally. You're going into the field? Fear spiked through her. Why can't you coordinate from here too? Because Chen needs to see me, needs to understand that this is personal, that I'm willing to put myself at risk to protect what's mine. His hand came up, brushing a strand of hair from her face. And because if this is going to end permanently, I need to look him in the eye when I make my final offer. What final offer? Leave the city, tonight. Take whatever liquid assets he can grab and disappear. In exchange, I let him live. Greg's expression was granite. If he refuses, then I end him. No negotiation. No mercy. Haley's stomach turned. You're going to kill him, if necessary. But I'm hoping he's smart enough to choose exile. He cupped her face between his palms, forcing her to meet his eyes. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Can you stay here with Pearl, follow security protocols, and trust that I know what I'm doing? She should say no. Should grab her daughter and run as far and fast as possible from this world of violence and calculated cruelty. But when she looked at Greg, really looked at him, she saw the same fierce protectiveness she felt for Pearl. Saw someone who'd made her safety his personal mission. Saw a man who'd given them sanctuary when they had none. I trust you, she whispered. His kiss was sudden and fierce, not gentle, not asking permission, just taking what he needed. Haley kissed him back with the same desperation, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Greg rested his forehead against hers. Stay alive, Haley said, her voice breaking. Whatever happens with Chen, whatever you have to do, stay alive and come back to us. Always, he promised. I always come back. The hours until midnight crawled by with agonizing slowness. Haley tried to keep Pearl occupied, playing games and reading books and pretending everything was normal. But her daughter had developed the same hypervigilance Haley carried, the same ability to sense when adults were hiding something. "Is Mr. Gregg going to fight the bad men?" Pearl asked as Haley tucked her into bed. There was no point lying. "Yes, baby. He's going to make sure they can't hurt us anymore." "Will he get hurt?" "I don't know, but he's very strong and very smart. And he promised to come back." Pearl considered this seriously. "I like Mr. Gregg. He's nice to us. Not like Daddy was." The casual mention of Derek made Haley's chest ache. "Mr. Gregg is different from Daddy." "Good different." "Yes, baby. Good different." After Pearl finally fell asleep, Haley went downstairs to the command center. Victor was there, coordinating teams via encrypted communications, his voice calm and controlled despite the organized chaos on the monitors. Gregg was suiting up literal tactical gear over his expensive clothing, body armor and weapons that looked military grade. He looked up when Haley entered, and something in his expression softened. "You should be resting." "I can't. Not while you're—" She gestured helplessly at the preparations. He crossed to her, and even in full tactical gear, he moved with that predatory grace. "I'll be back by dawn. Trust me." "I do, but I'm still terrified." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." He kissed her forehead, gentle despite the weapon strapped to his body. "Lock yourself in the safe room here if anything happens. Don't come out for anyone except Victor or Mrs. Chen." "Gregg, I have to go. The teams are in position." One more kiss. Harder this time, almost bruising. "Stay safe, Haley. Keep Pearl safe. That's your job tonight." Then he was gone, disappearing into the night with Victor and 8 others, leaving Haley alone in the command center with the monitors showing various teams moving into position across the city. She watched the screens, tracking Gregg's team as they approached a sprawling mansion on the city's outskirts, Chen's residence. Watched them breach the perimeter with professional efficiency. Watched them disappear into the building. And then the feeds went dark. "What happened?" Haley demanded, panic spiking. "Why did the cameras cut out?" Mrs. Chen appeared beside her, moving silently despite her injuries. "Chen has signal jammers. We expected this. The teams are operating on radio silence until they complete their objectives. So we just wait, not knowing if they're alive or dead? We wait, and we trust that Mr. Ban knows what he's doing." The housekeeper's hand rested briefly on Haley's shoulder. "He's survived worse than Marcus Chen. He'll survive this too." But the minutes stretched into an hour, then 2, and the screens stayed dark. At 2:47 a.m., the communications finally crackled back to life. "Command, this is Band. Primary objective complete. Chen is in custody. Minimal casualties on our side. Requesting extraction." Haley sagged against the desk, relief making her knees weak. Mrs. Chen immediately started coordinating, her fingers flying over keyboards, directing teams. "Status of other locations?" she asked crisply. Victor's voice came through. "Docks warehouse secured. Gambling operations shut down. Loan office cleared. Chen's entire operation is dark. We got them all. Casualties. 2 of ours injured, non-critical. 17 of Chen's men in custody. 23, not in custody. Dead. 23 men dead in one night." Haley felt sick, but she pushed it down. This was the world she'd entered. This was the price of protection. "Ita to compound?" Mrs. Chen asked. 90 minutes. We're bringing Chen. Boss wants him here for the final conversation." They were bringing Marcus Chen here. To the compound, where Pearl was sleeping. "Is that safe?" Haley blurted out. "Mrs. Chen gave her a look. "Mr. Ban wouldn't bring him here if it posed a risk. Chen will be secured, guarded, and contained. You and Pearl are in no danger." The 90 minutes felt like 90 hours. Haley checked on Pearl 3 times, finding her daughter sleeping peacefully each time, blissfully unaware that the man who'd terrorized them for 3 years was about to be brought to their sanctuary. When the vehicles finally arrived, Haley watched from the command center monitors as Gregg emerged from the lead SUV. He was alive, whole, blood on his tactical vest but moving without injury. Behind him, Victor hauled Marcus Chen out of the second vehicle. Chen looked smaller than Haley remembered. Older. His expensive suit was torn and bloodied, his hands zip-tied behind his back, his face a mask of bruises and fury. They brought him into the compound's basement, a space Haley hadn't known existed. All concrete and steel and serious locks. Chen was secured to a chair bolted to the floor, and guards took positions at the door. Greg appeared in the command center, still in his tactical gear, exhaustion and adrenaline warring on his face. "It's done," he said simply. Haley went to him, needing to touch him, to confirm he was real and alive. Her hands ran over his vest, checking for injuries, and found blood that wasn't his. "Are you hurt?" "Bruised. Nothing serious." He caught her hands, stilling their frantic movement. "I'm okay, Haley. I told you I'd come back." "What happens now? With Chen?" "Now I give him his choice. Exile or death." Greg's eyes were hard. "I'm going down there in 10 minutes. Do you want to be there?" The question surprised her. "Why would I want to be there?" "Because he's the man who terrorized you for 3 years. Who made you run. Who put that fear in your eyes that I'm still trying to erase." Greg's jaw tightened. "You have a right to see him brought low. To hear him acknowledge that he has no power over you anymore. If you want that closure, I'll give it to you." Haley thought about it. About 3 years of looking over her shoulder. About Pearl learning to sleep with her shoes on. About the constant, grinding fear that had become her normal. "I want to be there," she said firmly. "I want to look him in the eye when he realizes he lost." Greg smiled, sharp and approving. "Then come with me." The basement interrogation room was exactly as harsh as the monitors had shown. Concrete walls, bright lights, Marcus Chen secured to a chair in the center. He looked up when Greg entered, and his eyes widened when he saw Haley behind him. "You brought her? Really?" Chen's laugh was bitter. "All this, the war, the casualties, burning my operation to the ground for her?" "Not for her," Greg's voice was ice. "For the principle that you don't attack what's mine. She's not yours. She's a debtor who owes me $130,000. Her deadbeat husband is gone, and the debt is forgiven." Chen's expression twisted with fury. "The hell it is. That money is gone, along with your operations, your territory, and your power in this city." Greg pulled up a chair, sitting across from Chen with dangerous calm. "Here's what's going to happen, Marcus. You're going to sign a document forgiving Haley Hoffin's debt in its entirety. Then you're going to leave Chicago. Tonight. You'll take whatever liquid assets you can access and disappear. Mexico, South America, I don't care where. But you're done here. And if I refuse, then you die. Right here, right now. And I make sure everyone knows what happened to the man who attacked my home." Chen stared at him, and Haley saw the moment realization hit. Greg wasn't bluffing. This wasn't a negotiation. This was a sentencing. "You think you can just take over my territory?" Chen spat. "My people won't accept. Your people already have. The ones who survived the night have been offered positions in my organization. Most accepted. The ones who didn't." Greg shrugged. "They're no longer your concern." "This is insane." Over one woman and her brat. Greg moved faster than Haley could track. 1 second he was sitting calmly in his chair. The next, his hand was around Chen's throat, the chair tipping backward until Chen's head hit the concrete with a sickening crack. "Her name is Pearl," Greg said, his voice deadly quiet. "And you will never speak about her again. You will never think about her again. You will forget they exist. Are we clear?" Chen choked, his face reddening, until Greg released him. The chair rocked back to upright, and Chen gasped for air. "Fine," he rasped. "Fine. I'll sign your document. I'll leave. Just let me go." Greg produced papers from somewhere prepared in advance, Haley realized. Victor handed him a pen. "Sign." Chen signed with shaking hands. Haley watched her tormentor's signature appear on the page, watched 3 years of terror become legally void with a few strokes of ink. "There," Chen spat. "It's done. Now let me go." "Not quite." Greg folded the document carefully, handing it to Victor. "You have 12 hours to leave the city. After that, every second you remain in my territory is borrowed time. And Marcus?" He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire room. "If you ever come back, if you ever contact Haley or Pearl, if you even think about them, I won't kill you quickly. I'll make it last. Days. Weeks if I'm feeling creative. And I'll make sure you understand, with absolute clarity, that you brought it on yourself." Chen's face went pale. "I understand." "Good." Greg straightened, nodding to the guards. "Get him out of my sight. Put him on a plane to wherever he wants to go that isn't here. If he's still in the country in 24 hours, bring me his head." The guards hauled Chen up, dragging him toward the exit. As he passed Haley, Chen looked at her with something like bitter resignation. "You have any idea what you've gotten into?" he asked. "What kind of man Band really is?" Haley met his eyes without flinching. I know exactly what kind of man he is. The kind who keeps his promises. The kind who protects people instead of terrorizing them. The kind who's better than you in every possible way. Chen laughed hollow and broken. You think that now. Wait until you see what he's capable of when he's really angry. Wait until… Enough! Greg's voice cracked like a whip. You've said your piece. Now go. Before I change my mind about letting you live. They dragged Chen out, and silence fell over the interrogation room. Haley stood there, processing what had just happened. The man who'd haunted her nightmares for 3 years was gone. Broken. Exiled. No longer a threat. She was free. The realization hit her like a physical force, and suddenly she was crying great heaving sobs that shook her entire body. Greg was there immediately, pulling her into his arms, holding her while she fell apart. It's over, he murmured into her hair. He can't hurt you anymore. You're safe. Pearl's safe. It's really over. Thank you, Haley gasped between sobs. Thank you, thank you. You don't have to thank me. Protecting you isn't a favor. It's… He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was rough with emotion. It's what I do for people I care about. Haley pulled back enough to look at his face. Care about? His thumb wiped away her tears with infinite gentleness. I care about you, Haley. More than I should, probably. More than is smart. But I can't seem to stop myself. I care about you too, she whispered. Even though you're dangerous and violent and you just terrorized a man into exile. Because I'm those things. Because I can protect you and Pearl in ways no one else can. His forehead rested against hers. I know what I am. I'm not a good man, but I'm trying to be a good man for you. You already are. She kissed him, pouring 3 years of fear and relief and desperate gratitude into it. You gave us our lives back. When they finally broke apart, Greg was smiling a real smile, warm and genuine. Then let's go home, to the compound, to Pearl. And tomorrow, we start figuring out what normal looks like. Dawn broke over the compound in shades of gold and pink, painting the forest in colors that seemed too beautiful for a place that had been a war room just hours ago. Haley woke to find herself in Greg's bed, not the guest suite, but his actual bedroom. She had no memory of getting here. Must have fallen asleep on the couch after the emotional devastation of watching Chen sign away her debt. Greg must have carried her. Pearl was curled up between them, somehow having migrated during the night. She was clutching her white rabbit in one hand and had the other hand tangled in Greg's shirt. Greg himself was awake, propped on one elbow, watching both of them with an expression Haley couldn't quite decipher. How long have you been awake? She whispered. An hour, maybe more. His hand came up, brushing hair from Pearl's sleeping face with careful tenderness. I couldn't stop thinking about how easily I could have lost this. If Chen's men had gotten through that safe room door, if my team had been 30 seconds slower, if anything had gone differently. But it didn't. We're safe. Pearl's safe. You made sure of it. This time, but there will be others. Other threats. Other men like Chen who think they can use you to get to me. His gray eyes met hers, serious and searching. That's what staying with me means, Haley. It means accepting that you'll always be a target. That Pearl will grow up with security details and safe rooms and the knowledge that the man protecting her isn't exactly legal. You were going to say something else. Before the man protecting her. Greg was quiet for a long moment. I was going to say her father, but I don't have that right. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Haley's breath caught. You want to be Pearl's father? I want to be the person she runs to when she's scared. The person who teaches her to be brave and smart and strong. The person who makes sure she never has to run from men like Chen, because I've already eliminated the threat before it reaches her. His voice dropped lower. I want to be your partner, not just your protector. Your equal. The person you trust with everything. You already are those things. Am I? Or am I just the dangerous man who saved you when you had no other choice? Haley shifted carefully, not wanting to wake Pearl, until she could cup Greg's face. You're the man who saw a terrified little girl begging for help and chose mercy over convenience. You're the man who gave us safety and dignity and a chance at a real life. You're the man who started a war to protect us and came back alive because you promised you would. She kissed him softly. You're not just the dangerous man who saved us. You're the man I'm choosing. Now. With full knowledge of what you are and what your world means. Something in Greg's expression cracked the careful control he maintained, slipping to reveal raw emotion underneath. I love you, he said, the words rough and unpracticed, like he hadn't said them in years. I don't know when it happened. Maybe when Pearl called me good different. Maybe when you trusted me enough to lock yourself in that safe room. But I love you, Haley. You and Pearl both. I love you too. Haley felt tears slip down her cheeks, which terrifies me, because loving you means accepting that I could lose you. That every time you leave to handle business, you might not come back. Then I'll have to make sure I always come back. His smile was fierce. I have too much to lose now. I'll be careful, paranoid, even, whatever it takes to keep coming home to you. Pearl stirred between them, her eyes blinking open with the disoriented confusion of a child waking in an unexpected place. Mommy? Why are we in Mr. Gregg's bed? Because we fell asleep here, baby. Pearl considered this, then snuggled deeper into the blankets. I like it. It's cozy. Can we sleep here every night? Gregg met Haley's eyes over Pearl's head, a question in his gaze. Haley nodded. If Mr. Gregg doesn't mind. I don't mind, he said softly, his hand finding Haley's across Pearl's sleeping form. I don't mind at all. 3 weeks later, Haley stood in the kitchen of the compound's main house, preparing breakfast while Pearl colored at the table and Gregg coordinated business on his phone. It was shockingly domestic for a criminal empire's headquarters. Yes, tell them the shipment can go through the North Harbor now, Gregg was saying, his voice carrying that tone of absolute authority that made grown men scramble to obey. We control those routes now. Chen's exile opened up opportunities we'd be stupid not to take. He hung up and immediately switched modes, turning to Pearl with a smile. How's your picture coming, Piccola? I made you. See? That's you being tall. And that's Mommy. And that's me. We're a family. Haley's hands stilled on the eggs she was scrambling. Pearl had drawn them before, had drawn families and houses and dreams, but this was different. This showed Gregg as part of that family unit, not a separate entity. Gregg studied the drawing seriously. This is very good. Can I keep it for my office? Really? You want my picture in your important office? Your pictures are the most important things I own. Pearl beamed, and Haley felt her heart do something complicated in her chest. The past 3 weeks had been an adjustment learning to live in Gregg's world, accepting the security measures and the dangerous business and the reality that the man she loved solved problems with violence when necessary. But they'd also been the happiest 3 weeks of her life. Pearl had gained weight, her cheeks filling out, her constant hunger finally satisfied. She laughed more, played without fear, slept through the night in her own bed instead of curled against Haley, ready to run at any moment. And Haley. Haley had learned to breathe again, to exist without looking over her shoulder, to trust that when Gregg said he'd handle something, it was handled. I have something for you, Gregg said, standing and pulling an envelope from his pocket. Both of you, actually. Haley wiped her hands on a towel, curious. What is it? Open it. Inside were legal documents, custody papers, adoption papers, and at the bottom, a certificate that made Haley's vision blur with tears. You paid off my medical debt, she whispered, staring at the letter from the hospital confirming zero balance. All of it. $43,000. Was keeping you afraid even after Chen was gone. I wanted you to be completely free. No debts, no obligations, nothing hanging over your head. Gregg, this is too much. No, it's exactly right. He took the papers from her shaking hands, setting them carefully on the counter. And the custody papers are a formality. I want to adopt Pearl, legally. Make her mine in the eyes of the law, not just in my heart. You want to adopt my daughter. I want to be her father. If you'll let me. If Pearl wants me to be. Pearl had been listening, her 4-year-old brain processing faster than Haley gave her credit for. Does that mean you'd be my daddy? My real daddy? Gregg crouched beside her chair, bringing himself to her eye level with that careful respect he always showed. It means I'd be the person who tucks you in at night and teaches you to be brave and protects you from anything that tries to hurt you. It means you'd be my daughter, and I'd be your father. If you want that. What about my other daddy? The one who left? He's gone, Piccola. He made bad choices and left when you needed him most. That was wrong. But some people aren't strong enough to be parents. I am. And I want to be yours. Pearl thought about this with the seriousness she brought to all important decisions. Will you teach me to fight? So I can protect Mommy too? Gregg's laugh was surprised and genuine. When you're older, yes. I'll teach you to protect yourself and the people you love. Okay. Then yes, you can be my daddy. She said it so simply, like it was the easiest decision in the world, and maybe for her it was. Greg pulled Pearl into a hug that made Haley's eyes burn with unshed tears. Over Pearl's shoulder, he met Haley's gaze. "Marry me," he said quietly. Haley's breath caught. "What?" "Marry me. Make this official. Let me be Pearl's father and your husband and the person who stands beside you for the rest of our lives." He stood, still holding Pearl, and faced Haley directly. "I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other 3 weeks. But I've never been more certain of anything in my life." "You want to marry me?" Haley repeated, still processing. "I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and know that you're mine and I'm yours. I want to teach Pearl to be strong and smart and brave. I want to give you both everything I have, the protection, the resources, the future that men like your ex-husband could never provide." His free hand found hers, squeezing gently. "Say yes, Haley. Take a chance on the dangerous man who loves you." Haley looked at her daughter, safe and happy in Greg's arms. Looked at this man who'd turned their lives around, who'd fought a war for them, who wanted to make them his family. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Pearl cheered, bouncing in Greg's arms. "We're going to be a real family. Mommy, we're going to be a real family." And as Greg kissed her fierce and possessive and full of promise, Haley finally understood. They already were. The wedding had been small. Just family Victor, Mrs. Chen, a few of Greg's most trusted people. Pearl had been the flower girl, wearing a dress that made her look like a princess, and carrying her white rabbit because she insisted he needed to be part of the ceremony. Now, standing on the balcony of the compound, watching Pearl play in the garden with Victor's daughter, who'd known Victor had a family, Haley still sometimes couldn't believe this was her life. "What are you thinking about?" Greg's arms wrapped around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "How different everything is from a year ago. How scared I was. How sure I was that we'd never be safe. And now? Now I'm married to a man who runs half the criminal operations in Chicago, living in a fortress in upstate New York, and somehow that feels safer than any legitimate life I could have built." His laugh rumbled through her back. "I'm not sure if that says more about my security measures or about how broken the legal system is. Both, probably." Haley turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd become her husband, her partner, her daughter's father. "No regrets? About marrying you?" "Never." He kissed her softly. "About the empire? Sometimes. But then I come home to you and Pearl, and I remember why I do this, who I'm protecting, and it all makes sense again." Pearl's laugh carried from the garden, bright and carefree. She was 5 now, in kindergarten at a private school near the compound, making friends and learning to read and completely unaware that her father was one of the most dangerous men in the state. She'd learn eventually. They'd have to tell her, help her understand what Greg did and why. But for now, she was just a little girl who loved her parents and felt safe in the world. And wasn't that what every parent wanted? To give their child the safety and security to just be a child? "I love you," Haley said, meaning it with her whole heart. "My dangerous, violent, absolutely devoted husband. I love you too. My brave, fierce, absolutely perfect wife." Greg's hand rested on her still flat stomach, where a new life was just beginning to grow. "Both of you." They'd found out 2 weeks ago. Another child. A sibling for Pearl. Another person to protect, to love, to build this strange, beautiful life around. Haley placed her hand over Greg's, feeling the steady beat of her own heart, the promise of the future they were building together. A year ago, she'd been terrified, running, desperate. A year ago, a little girl had begged a stranger not to hurt her mother, not knowing she was speaking to the one man who could actually keep that promise. Now they were a family. Unconventional, dangerous, built on foundations that wouldn't survive scrutiny from the outside world. But it was theirs, hard-won and fiercely protected and absolutely real, and Haley wouldn't change a single moment of the journey that brought them here. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.